And hello YouTube, this is Thomas Judge back once again with another installment of my DC Rebirth reading guide series. Today is video 3.5 in which we're going to be covering kind of some strange residual Year of the Villain stuff before we get into Dark Knight's death metal in video 3.6 in the next one. As a quick intro to where this fits in a more overarching sense, we've got to remember I've read the entirety of DC Rebirth, 3,370 issues, and I've been releasing a guide bit by bit for it. I've already covered a lot of the ancillary sections, things like Deceased and Licensed Worlds, and now I'm diving into the core, mainstream, consistent Rebirth universe or continuity, which is 2,724 single issues. What you can see here are the playlists on my channel. I've structured them like this to just make it easier for you. There's one massive playlist with every single DC Rebirth video that I will ever do in that. There's loads in there. But harvested out of that and curated out of that are three separate smaller playlists if you're just looking for something a bit more refined and a bit more specific. One is for my DC Rebirth custom content, custom binds, custom prints, custom comics. One is for my DC Rebirth non-core reading guides, like I mentioned, Licensed World, Deceased, things like that. And then the third one is this, which is DC Rebirth Core Universe. And this video is in that section specifically. I would remind you before you watch this video, please go back and watch the introduction video for this series, video 0.0, or perhaps the introduction video for my new 52 series, which is also video 0.0, because that will indicate where this guide kind of fits in, how it follows on for my new 52 reader guide, and also covers key concepts like volume with a big V, volume with a small v, and also type P and J readers, which are really fundamental concepts that I repeat again and again. I refer to in every single video, and I can't go into it every single time. It takes way too long. So please watch the introduction so you've got some idea how my reading guides work. So today's video, with no further ado, we are going to dive straight into it. And here we have it. We're back at the map. As usual, just to remind you, we have the top level strategic event level map, and then we have the lower level, more granular trade paperback level map. Before I actually dive into today's video, just a few things to point out about the map and how it's evolved slightly. You may have noticed it already looks slightly different than it did in the last few videos. The reason for that is I've had some feedback from various people, and obviously I hate feedback and I don't like taking on board any new information. People have pointed out various bits and pieces, like for example Justice League versus Suicide Squad is really an event because it has its own event series. It has the 6-issue mini-series, which is the heart of that, so really that should be a black box. Fine, you're right, okay, fine, I did that. Also some people kind of whinged and they were like, oh, the writing's too small and so on and so forth, and I thought, that's ridiculous. And then I looked at it and you're right, the writing was too small, so I've increased the font size for all the writing across all of this to make it a bit more legible. So again, useful feedback, you all right. A few people pointed out some things about the consistency of the line thicknesses. There are some definite type P readers watching this guide, so annoying though those corrections were, yes, you are right, that's correct. I have sorted out the line thicknesses and I have tweaked it a little bit to make it a little bit more usable. I've also put a little bit of a blurb here. No one asked for this, but I thought it might be useful to just clarify what this map is for. And then on the lower one, what I did, no one asked for this, but I've stuck in a couple of logos. So we've now got a Dark Knight's Death Metal logo for that event. And we've got some Year of the Villain logos for these events here, which I'll stick in. And I also coloured the event boxes to be light grey. Someone did make the useful point that having these as just plain white made them look like there were these kind of boxes on the side as well. And actually, it does make sense to have them light grey thematically. So I need to fill in these as well. Oh, I'll sort that out in just a second. But yeah, long story short, people have been feeding back on it. Thank you for that. It's annoying, but it is helpful most of the time. I think I'd say I take on board about like 3 out of 5 sort of requests or things that people point out. But not everything, but that's the way it is. In terms of the map, some people have also pointed out that it has evolved throughout the course of the last 3 or 4 videos alone, and that is fair. Something I will point out is that these maps are going to be constantly evolving. Even after all these videos are dropped, I'm going to be tweaking it, improving the graphics, adding more images. I might put in like a wider background, that sort of thing. But it is linked live on my website, and that will always be the source of truth for these. That said, I understand it's a little bit confusing that perhaps these are evolving during the videos. So on the last video of this section 3, I think there's going to be either video 3.8 or 3.9. At the end of that video, I will do a really long, careful kind of like visual. Here it is. This is what it is. This is the final version of the map, which, as you can see, is only slightly different to the map we were looking at in video 3.1. But I will do that for you, the viewers, for those of you that can't be bothered going on the website and having a look at the live version there. But I will say it's going to continue evolving forever. It's going to always be tweaked and improved and optimized as I learn more things and as I learn more about both the comic universe and how to use the software to make it look a little bit sexier, basically. Anyway, into today's video. Right, so what did we talk about? Last time we spent ages talking about the Year of the Villain in depth, and to be honest, today we're largely going to carry on talking about the Year of the Villain. But what I want to talk about in this event is the way the Year of the Villain is collected. Now, previously I'd already pointed out in the last video that the best way to read it is just by reading this Justice League Volume 5, the Justice Doom War. But there is a lot of other stuff. There's over 130, 140 or so single issues of Year of the Villain. So is there an omnibus? Is there a way it's collected? Well, sort of. Before we get into that, let's just have a quick look at the actual trade collections that are part of the Year of the Villain event. Year of the Villain being this bit here. We've got the Justice Doom War, which we talked about last time. And then in addition to that, we have this volume here, The Infected. I'm going to show you what's in The Infected, because what The Infected covers actually has 6 single issues included in it. Now I'm just going to toggle over. This is the Year of the Villain map that we looked at last time. And if we look at The Infected, that particular volume contains these issues. It contains King Shazam as the first issue. So this is literally the order it's collected in. It then has Scarab. It then has Deathbringer, not to be confused with the Donna Troy Infected one-shot. There is no Donna Troy Infected one-shot. It was announced, but then it got renamed to Deathbringer. And then the fourth thing in that trade collection is The Infected, The Commissioner. Now, that trade collection does not collect this, the Black Adam Year of the Villain one-shot, even though that is kind of a prequel to King Shazam. So that's annoying. So it collects King Shazam, Scarab, Deathbringer, and the Commissioner. I might rejig those around in just a second. As I say, these are live maps that I can always edit. And then after the Commissioner, it then includes, let me just go up to it. This is it, Hawkman, The Infected. So Hawkman issue 18, as you can see here from the cover. That is the one, that is the one that's collected in that trade paperback. So that's the 5th issue collected. And then the 6th and final issue collected in that trade paperback is this one, which is Supergirl, The Infected. Supergirl issue 36. Which doesn't make a massive amount of sense unless you read the preceding one and you read the subsequent ones. So I'll be honest, not really that helpful a way to collect it. Let's go back here. So that's what this Infected is. It's those 6 issues. A bit confusing. Not the best way to collect it, unfortunately. As well, there is the trade paperback and oversized hardcover collection for the Batman Who Laughs. Now, the Batman Who Laughs is it's a 7-issue series. But as well as that seven issues, it also has a one-shot within it. So this particular trade collection or hardcover collection contains the Batman Who Laughs issues 1 to 3. Then the Batman Who Laughs The Grim Knight one-shot. And then the Batman Who Laughs issues 4 to 7. And again, for those of you that have watched my Dark Knight's Metal guide, there is a Batman Who Laughs one-shot in Dark Knight's Metal, not to be confused with any of the 8 issues collected here. It's none of Batman Who Laughs 1 to 7 or the Grim Knight one-shot, which is between issues 3 and 4. And then the final trade collection is not even available in a hardcover for this era, is Hell Arisen. Now, Hell Arisen has got this cover and it collects 5 issues, which I will talk through here. If I just jump over. What the Hell Arisen trade paperback collects is, and this is really annoying and actually slightly baffling, obviously it connects these 4 issues, 1, 2, 3, and 4. But at the beginning, it collects all the way up here. It collects this issue. This one here. And then it collects nothing in between at all, skips all this, and then collects these 4 issues. which is not a good way to read this event because it means you've essentially skipped the majority of the event. Yeah, I know this is kind of disheartening to think about the way that this has been collected, and it hasn't been collected in a very good or helpful way. However, whilst it hasn't been collected in an explicit omnibus, it has sneakily been collected in other volumes with different titles, specifically Justice League omnibuses. And I'm just going to cut away and go to a new section, and we're going to talk about how those omnibuses work and how they are mapped to either the hardcovers or the trade paperbacks. So the first thing that I want to discuss is this particular omnibus, which came out about a year ago. As you can see, it's called Justice League by Scott Snyder and James Tynion, the fourth, Omnibus Volume 1. This is an overview of it, and it's by the channel Name and Condition, which is the one I use to grab thumbnails, and I recommend looking at their videos, and I strongly recommend subscribing to them and following all the things that they do over there. But in this video, they kind of do an overview of the omnibus, and the omnibus is available at Amazon. But what I'm going to talk you through is the contents of this Omnibus 1. So you can see the contents here, but I've split them into 3 discrete sections because I think there's 3 quite interesting things about it. So the first section at the top, you can see the Omnibus collects a story from DC Nation 0 and then No Justice 1 to 4. Now, as we discussed, that No Justice trade paperback, so the left-hand image at the top saying No Justice, that contains issues 1 to 4 and the prelude from DC Nation 0. Brilliant. So that entire trade paperback is collected in this omnibus. We're then looking at Justice League issues 1 to 9. Now, the second trade paperback you can see there, the one called Justice League Scott Snyder Volume 1, the totality, that contains most of those issues, but not all of them. The rest of those issues being collected slightly lower down in that small thumbnail image you can see, which is Justice League Trade Paperback 2, Graveyard of the Gods. Now we're into the second set of bullet points. And Graveyard of the Gods includes all the issues there that aren't tie-in issues. So it doesn't include Aquaman 41, 42 or 28. Those issues are included in that slightly larger thumbnail saying Justice League Aquaman Drowned Earth, and I show it on my map and I'll show you again in a second, and that contains the full Drowned Earth event. Well, what's important to note is that this omnibus also contains the entire Drowned Earth event. So whilst the Drowned Earth can be read without the tie-ins, and that's why Graveyard of the Gods works as a collection to read, if you want to read the full event, then you do need to read Aquaman, Justice League Aquaman Drowned Earth, that collection. Or you can read this omnibus for the entire event. This omnibus is actually the only place to collect that Drowned Earth arc in an oversized format, which I think is really useful and really cool. I will point out my disclaimer, as I said in the video a couple of videos back, Titans 28 has got a lot of spoilers in it for things going on in Batman, so you may not want to read it anyway. After that second set of bullet points, you then got the third set of bullet points, which is Justice League issues 13 to 16, Annual 1, and then 17 to 18. This isn't track exactly because those issues there don't all go in the Hawk World second trade paperback. In fact, issue 13 I think is in Graveyard of the Gods, as we discussed before. But long story short, let's just keep it brief. You can see these trade paperback covers here. All of these are collected in the exact right sequence and in full completionist order with all the tie-ins and everything in the Omnibus Volume 1, and you can see the cover there on the right. If we look at the map, here you've got a little red line around the trade paperbacks that are collected. You've got No Justice, Justice League Volume with a small V1, and then Graveyard of the Gods and Drowned Earth. Obviously, there's a lot of double dipping between those two smaller volumes, but all the right issues are collected in the right way in the omnibus, and then the entirety of Hawk World. I'm not going to go into it now, but you can see that obviously this already doesn't quite match the oversized hardcover mapping and collections and contents, but I covered those in preceding videos, so if you want to know what's going on there, you need to go back to those. But that's for those oversized hardcovers as opposed to the trade paperbacks, which you can see here, all the omnibuses we're talking about. So that's Omnibus Volume 1. There was then an Omnibus Volume 2, which came out several months ago. And again, as you can see, this is called Justice League by Scott Snyder and James Tynion. It's a Volume 2. This is the overview again from Name and Condition. Strongly recommend their channel. The cover artwork here for Justice League isn't actually from a single issue of Justice League. It was a specific bit of cover art commissioned for this omnibus. If we look at the contents here, we've got Justice League 19 to 25, which are the issues from that trade paperback cover. You can see the Sixth Dimension. The Sixth Dimension does contain a couple of other issues, but let's not get into that. As I say, the trade paperback mapping is a little bit odd, but the omnibus collects everything from the trade paperback if you mush them all together. So Justice League 19 to 25, it then collects the Batman Who Laughs trade paperback we were just talking about, and it collects it in the right sequence with the Grim Knight one-shot between issues 3 to 4. And then after that, it collects the Year of the Villain special, Justice League 26 to 39, and Year of the Villain Hell Arisen. So as you can see from that bottom set of bullet points, whilst the Year of the Villain Hell Arisen trade paperback, and the image is just there, the thumbnail there, that collects Year of the Villain special and then Hell Arisen, and it neglects collecting Justice League 26 to 39, so it's not a good way to read it, whilst the omnibus collects everything in the right order. If we move to the map, you can see here I've drawn a red line around the trade paperback collections that are all collected and mushed together in the omnibus, and as you can see, it's the Sixth Dimension, Justice Doom War, Batman Who Laughs, which is actually before the Justice Doom War when it's arranged in the omnibus, and then Hell Arisen. But those trade paperback collections rather, and all the issues within them are collected and curated in the correct sequence in Omnibus Volume 2. So if you're after a Year of the Villain omnibus, that's really what you want. If you want a Year of the Villain omnibus that has the other issues in, like the Infected, for example, and the Batman Superman tie-ins, and all the other kind of one-shots and bits and pieces, there currently isn't one. All right, we're back at the map. As you can see, I have already shaded these in grey to make that work. As I say, it's a live bit of software, it's a live map, so it's always improving. With the Year of the Villain collection conversation out of the way, what I want to get into now is what I call the Between Metal era. And that is sort of the very brief era of Justice League, which is between the Metal events. So between Dark Knight's Metal, Year of the Villain, that's all kind of one big thing. And then between this and the Death Metal event we're going to get into, there are just a couple of outlier issues which we can see here. Now, the best way to think about this is that after the publishing mess of the Year of the Villain's various timelines settled down, there was also the fact that we were in a COVID-impacted world at this point. So publishing schedules were just all kind of awry and out of sync. To allow everything to sync up again, we see Justice League temporarily move over to a different writer. So these two volumes you can see here are written by Robert Venditti, who I've got a bit of a soft spot for from my massive 77 video Valiant reading guide. And he basically took it over. He wrote two trade paperbacks of issues that are largely standalone, can either be read at any time or can be considered basically self-contained. Now, I am aware there are Type P readers watching these videos. And for you, for the obsessive Type P reader, I will point out, and I will agree, that the events of these two storylines take place in the paradoxical timeline of Earth Zero, which was born as a consequence of perpetual fracturing hypertime in the DC universe at the end of the Year of the Villain, which means that multiple events across the DC universe happen at the same time in parallel, and these events will eventually be merged into a single continuity and timeline into the main timeline after the rebirth of creation in Dark Knight's Death. Do you know what? I'm not even going to get into it. Actually, I know where this kind of fits in, but for a normal, as in average, as in Type J reader, these are just things to look at in isolation. These two volumes are fine just as one and dones. So the first one is a trade paperback called Vengeance is the Thine. It contains issues 40 to 47 and Annual 2. It's got two main story arcs. The first one is the arc from 40 to 43. That's about the Eradicator, which I know is a bit of a Superman thing, but there we are. The second arc is the rest of it, which is a Spectre arcs. That's issues 44 to 47. Now, weirdly enough, the annual is set after issue 43. It's set before issue 44. But for some reason, the trade paperback collects it right at the end, which is annoying and incorrect. But there we are. I'd recommend reading it in singles, as I always recommend reading everything in singles. The next and final trade paperback we're going to be talking about today is called Galaxy of Terrors. Now, Simon Spurrier takes over writing duty for 3 of these issues, and then Jeff Loveness takes over for the final 1 or 2 of them. But like the preceding story, like Vengeance is Thine, this is unrelated to anything and is simply a palette cleanser for the scheduling calendar in the real world and getting all those issues to sync up together. So Galaxy of Terrors contains issues 48 to 52. A couple of things to point out here. Neither of these volumes reference Year of the Villain at all, and neither of these volumes have anything to do whatsoever with the event on the right, which is Dark Knight's Death Metal, at all. In addition, neither of these have been collected in an oversized hardcover. They're just literally orphaned issues. Well, not orphaned issues because they're collected in trade paperbacks, but they're orphaned trade paperbacks that haven't been collected in a hardcover format. So with that out of the way, with the publishing schedule sorted out, with Year of the Villain finally demarcated with an end in the Hell Arisen event, what came next was the return of Snyder back on the Justice League with the Death Metal event. Now, in the next video, which will be in 2 or 3 days' time, we are going to be talking about the Death Metal event in detail. I'm going to talk about it the same way that I talked about the Dark Knight's Metal event, where I'm going to talk through what the full contents are, how the omnibus was mapped, and how you would read it if you only had it in trade paperback collections or singles. And we're going to be covering this event in its totality. That's not the best word to use. In its full completeness, we're going to be covering this event as a whole. And keeping in mind that's this event here. So everything we've talked about today has literally just been talking about the collected versions of Year of the Villain, and then a little bit of this connective tissue here, which frankly, if we look back at these 2 volumes here, you can ignore or read whenever you like. It's not really something you need to worry about. So we're going to go from Year of the Villain now. Today was a wrap-up video. The next video is going to be the full, total, end-to-end Dark Knight's Death Metal.
Alright, thanks for watching everybody. As always, please like, comment, subscribe. As always, please follow me on Twitter at @IamThomasJudge, where I will post a daily review of whatever comics I've been reading. You can get an idea of what I'm up to on the channel. And as always, please support the channel by heading over to Amazon.com and checking out my prose novel about superheroes. It's a completely original piece of work. The first episode in it is called Arrivals, and the series as a whole is called No Gods or Kings. You can find an excerpt of that on my website, nogodsorkings.com. Until next time, everybody, stay classy.